My mother-in-law called me a poor beggar in my own house. She thought her daughter owned our house until I asked her to leave and never return. Everything happened really fast. I will tell you how it all unfolded. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you're watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. They say silence is a form of strength, but sometimes it's just camouflage for being overlooked. I used to believe that if I worked hard, paid the bills, and stayed quiet, respect would follow naturally. But in my own home, silence made me invisible. My name is Marcus. I work in real estate, not flashy high-rises or multi-million-dollar condos, just steady property management and mid-range flips. I've always been practical with money, disciplined with my choices, and deliberate with my generosity. That's who I've always been, even before I met Leah. She came into my life like a soft wind, gentle, calm, the kind of woman who made you believe that peace at home was worth more than gold. We dated for 2 years, married the third, and by the 5th year I had bought us a modest but comfortable house. Nothing extravagant, but it was ours, or so I thought. From the outside, everything looked stable. I covered the mortgage, the utilities, and the insurance. When Leah's little brother got into debt, I helped pay it off. When her mother couldn't cover her property tax, I footed the bill. I never said much about it. I didn't do it for credit. I did it because that's what family is supposed to do, help each other. At least, that's the lie I told myself every time I watched my in-laws take from me with zero gratitude and growing entitlement. Leah never bragged about what I did, but she never corrected the assumptions either. And maybe that silence was the first red flag I should have paid attention to. Her mother, Patricia, had always rubbed me the wrong way. From the beginning, she had this unspoken disapproval of me, like I'd stolen her daughter from some imagined prince. She visited often, and each time she made herself a little more at home, adjusting furniture, offering unsolicited advice on how I should spend our money, even rearranging the living room because the energy felt off. At first, I laughed it off. Then I tolerated it. Eventually, I dreaded her visits altogether. But Leah always waved it away. She's just being mom, she'd say. And for peace's sake, I let it go. Until I couldn't anymore. One Friday morning, I woke early. I'd been tossing all night, so I got up before sunrise and walked into the kitchen to make coffee. As I poured the water into the machine, I heard Patricia's voice, loud and unfiltered, from the guest room. The door was cracked. She was on the phone, and I swear she must have thought I wasn't home. "I don't know what you're doing with that poor beggar," she said, each word dipped in disgust. "You could have married someone who would lift this whole family up. But instead, you chose a man who hides his money like a rat, doesn't even buy us gifts regularly. Stingy, selfish, and small-minded." The words stung more than I expected. I wasn't just angry, I was gutted. This was the woman who ate my food, sat on my couch, and slept under my roof. And she called me a beggar? I felt my pulse in my throat. My hands clenched involuntarily, the steam from the coffee fogging up my glasses as if to blur the insult I couldn't unhear. But I didn't barge in. I stood there, stone still, as she continued. "He's the worst decision you ever made. You should have picked someone who knew how to provide for a family, not just you, but all of us." I didn't wait for her to finish. I walked upstairs, each step heavier than the last. I didn't even sip the coffee. My chest was tight, not with hurt, but with resolve. That was the moment I knew silence wouldn't protect me anymore. That night at dinner, I kept my voice calm. I served her plate like I always did, even added an extra scoop of mashed potatoes because I knew she liked them that way. She complimented the food, her usual fake charm, and asked if I could help her with another bill she was behind on. That was her rhythm. Take, smile, repeat. "Actually," I said, putting down my fork, "I think it's time you left." The table froze. Leah blinked at me like I'd spoken in tongues. "What do you mean?" Patricia asked, her voice half laugh, half challenge. "I mean it's time you packed your things. Tonight. You won't be staying here anymore." She scoffed. "Excuse me? This is my daughter's house." That was when I leaned back in my chair and smiled, not out of joy, but clarity. "No, Patricia. I bought this house 5 years ago. Paid every dime of the mortgage. The deed is in my name. Leah knows that. She looked at Leah, who didn't say a word. Her silence confirmed everything. For a brief second, Patricia looked like a woman caught stealing from a store she thought had no cameras. Her mouth opened, then closed. But pride wouldn't let her surrender. Well, you may own it, but that doesn't mean you can disrespect me. No, I said, rising to my feet. You disrespected yourself. You insulted me in my own home. You call me a beggar. So go beg somewhere else. She left that night, fuming, bags in hand. Leah didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. And yet, I slept like a man who had just taken his first deep breath in years. The silence the next morning was thicker than usual. I woke up before Leah, partly out of habit, partly because I didn't expect to sleep as deeply as I had. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom for a moment, watching her back rise and fall beneath the covers. She hadn't said a single word to me the night before. Not when her mother slammed the door behind her. Not when I washed the dishes alone. Not even when I climbed into bed next to her and whispered, "Good night." She just turned away and pretended to sleep. I knew what that meant. The line I drew had split more than just our home. It had cut right down the middle of our marriage. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the window. For the first time in a long time, the house actually felt quiet. No TV playing loud reality shows. No passive-aggressive comments about the way I stacked dishes. No perfume lingering in the hallway like an unwanted guest. And yet, peace didn't come as quickly as I thought it would. It was like removing a splinter only to realize the wound still stung. I wasn't questioning what I did. I knew I had every right. But the aftershock was real, especially because Leah had yet to pick a side. Around 8:30, she finally came down, still in her robe, eyes tired and guarded. She didn't kiss me good morning. She didn't even meet my gaze. She just opened the fridge, took out some eggs, and moved like I wasn't there. The tension wrapped around us like invisible wire, tight, unforgiving. "I can't believe you did that," she finally said, cracking an egg into a bowl. Her voice was flat, but the edge was there. "Did what?" I asked, already knowing the answer but refusing to let her twist the narrative. "Kick my mother out. Just like that. No warning. No discussion." I set my glass down carefully. "She called me a beggar, Leah. In my own house. She said I was the worst decision you ever made." She didn't respond immediately, just whisked the eggs harder, like they were the problem. "You shouldn't have eavesdropped." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "So the issue isn't what she said, it's that I heard it?" "I'm saying she was upset. People say things when they're angry." I stepped closer, keeping my voice low but steady. "She wasn't angry. She was plotting. She was trying to convince you to leave me for someone richer. Someone who could support your entire family." Leah finally turned, arms crossed. "And what if she was just concerned? You don't exactly throw money around, Marcus. You've never been generous to them." That hit harder than it should have. My jaw clenched. "Generous? I've paid your brother's debts. I've covered her utilities, her rates, even her damn property taxes. You think she did that with her pension? That was me, Leah. Every time she smiled and said, 'Thank you, baby girl,' it was me writing those checks. I just never waved it in front of her face." She blinked, stunned for a moment. "You never told me. I shouldn't have to." We stood there in the thick of it, years of imbalance rising to the surface like mold beneath fresh paint. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about Patricia. It was about Leah, too. Her silence wasn't just complicity, it was convenience. As long as things flowed, as long as I didn't complain, she had no reason to stop anyone from bleeding me dry. "I'm done," I said, more to myself than to her. "I'm done paying for people who don't respect me. Starting today, no more utility bills for her. No more property taxes. No more calls asking for help. She wants someone generous? Let her find one." Leah opened her mouth, then shut it. She didn't defend her mother. She didn't thank me either. She just nodded slowly, like she knew she couldn't argue without exposing her own comfort in the arrangement. Later that day, the first call came. "Patricia," straight to voicemail. Then a text. "Baby girl, your husband is overreacting. I didn't mean those things. Can we talk?" She didn't know I was the one reading the messages. Leah had left her phone unlocked on the table. I stared at the screen, jaw tight. As the dots blinked and another message popped up. Tell him I'm sorry if he was offended. But this isn't how family behaves. We're struggling. He should understand that. I should have let it go. I should have tossed the phone on the couch and walked away. But something in me snapped, the gall of it all. Not an apology. Not accountability. Just another attempt to manipulate guilt. I picked up Leah's phone, walked to her, and showed her the messages. She still doesn't get it, I said. She's not sorry for what she said. She's sorry it cost her something. Leah looked down, ashamed. I'll talk to her. No, I will. I called Patricia from my own phone. She answered on the second ring, her voice sweet like syrup. Marcus, I was hoping you'd call. I didn't let her continue. You thought your daughter owned the house. You thought you could say what you wanted and still benefit from my wallet. Now you know the truth. And I'm okay being stingy. I'd rather be stingy than be your doormat. She gasped. You don't mean that. We're family. No, I interrupted. You were family. Now you're just a lesson. Don't call here again. And I hung up. There's a different kind of silence that settles in after you set boundaries. One that doesn't feel peaceful but hollow, like walking through your childhood home after the furniture's been cleared out. You recognize it, but it's not warm anymore. That was what the house became after I hung up on Patricia. Not hostile, not chaotic, just still. Leah hadn't spoken much since the call. She didn't defend her mother, not anymore. But she didn't praise me either. And for a while, I didn't know which silence cut deeper, hers or the one I demanded from her mother. I tried to pretend things were normal. I went to work. I responded to emails. I even picked up Leah's favorite coffee on my way home, just to see if she'd smile. She said thank you, and that was it. I kept looking at her the way you stare at someone you've lived with for years, but suddenly feel like a stranger to. Because now, every small silence was loaded. Every glance, every pause, every, I'm fine, held the ghost of that confrontation. We were both trying to pretend the house hadn't changed. But we both knew it had. By the end of that week, I did what I should have done long ago. I called the utility company and removed my name from Patricia's account. I called the city council and informed them I wouldn't be covering her rates anymore. I left no room for negotiation. The man on the phone paused when I told him. She's going to be shocked, he said, half chuckling. She's been telling folks her daughter's husband is loaded. I smiled without warmth. She won't be saying that anymore. I didn't tell Leah I had made the calls. I wanted to see how long it would take for the shock to ripple through the family. Turns out, not long at all. Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Unknown numbers, voicemails, even a few texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. The one that stood out most came from her brother, Daniel. Hey man, you really cut mom off? What's going on? That's cold, bro. Cold. That word stuck with me. Not stingy anymore, cold. I didn't reply. I just stared at the message and wondered how many times these people had leaned on my wallet while laughing behind my back. That night, Leah finally cracked the silence. We were in bed, the glow of her phone lighting up the room while I stared at the ceiling. You really stopped paying her bills? She asked, voice soft but pointed. I did. I replied without looking at her. She doesn't get to insult me and live off me at the same time. Leah turned to face me. She's scared Marcus. The lights went out at her place yesterday. She should have thought of that before she ran her mouth. She didn't mean it like that, she argued, but her tone lacked conviction. I finally turned to face her. No, she meant every word. She just didn't mean for me to hear it. There's a difference. Leah stared at me, searching for something in my eyes. Regret, maybe. Softness. But I didn't have any left for Patricia. Maybe not even for Leah in that moment. All I felt was tired of being the only adult in the room. The only one who gave without expectation and got nothing but ridicule in return. I just wish you would have talked to me before making that decision, she said finally. I did talk to you, I replied. You just didn't want to hear it until the consequences started affecting your mother. She didn't respond, and I knew then we weren't on the same team. Not completely. Maybe we never had been. The next escalation came 3 days later. Patricia showed up at my office. Not the house. Not Leah's phone. My office. I stepped out of a meeting to find her sitting in the lobby, legs crossed, sunglasses on like she was shielding herself from the shame that had finally caught up with her. Can we talk? She asked, standing quickly when she saw me. I motioned her to the side hallway. You have 5 minutes. She smiled, tight and polished. I didn't mean to offend you, Marcus. That wasn't my intention. I stared at her, unimpressed. It wasn't your intention to call me a beggar? Or to tell your daughter to leave me for someone richer? Her expression flickered, but she held her ground. I was emotional. I felt like you weren't doing enough for the family. There it is, I said, stepping closer. You think I owe you something. That's the problem. I just thought. No, you assumed. You assumed Leah owned the house. You assumed I'd keep paying your bills forever. And you assumed wrong. She sighed, the first honest emotion I'd seen from her in weeks. I made a mistake. I was frustrated, and I took it out on you. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. Not because the apology was late, but because it came only after the money stopped. If I had kept funding her life, those words would never have passed her lips. She didn't regret what she did. She regretted what it cost her. I'm glad you said that, I told her. But I'm still not helping you. You'll need to find someone else to take advantage of. I walked away, leaving her standing there, small and quiet in the hallway. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. You'd be surprised how quickly people start talking when the money dries up. In less than a week, I went from good son-in-law to the stingy one, and the whispers traveled fast. Family group chats I'd been excluded from suddenly mentioned my name like I was the villain in a soap opera rerun. I didn't need to see the messages to know what they said. People like Patricia didn't suffer quietly. She suffered loudly, dramatically, with just enough exaggeration to turn a simple boundary into a full-blown betrayal. The first concrete fallout came from Leah's aunt, Veronica. She called me at work, something she'd never done before, and left a voicemail with just enough passive aggression to make my stomach turn. Marcus, I just heard what happened. Patricia's been through a lot, you know. Maybe now's not the time to teach lessons. Family helps each other. That's what love looks like. Love. That word burned. Because if love looked like being insulted in your own house while secretly funding someone else's lifestyle, then I wanted no part of it. I replayed the message twice, not because I was debating how to respond, but because I couldn't believe how thoroughly the narrative had flipped. In their eyes, I hadn't protected myself. I had turned my back on them. There was no room in their world for self-respect, only sacrifice. And I wasn't playing that part anymore. At home, Leah walked on eggshells. She didn't ask me to reconsider, but I could feel the weight of what she wasn't saying. She'd sigh more often. She'd bring up memories of times when her mother had been kind, as if to balance the ledger. But I wasn't interested in nostalgia. I was living in the present, and the present was drowning in unspoken resentment. One evening, we sat in silence, eating dinner at opposite ends of the table. Halfway through, Leah finally asked, "Do you ever feel like you're being too harsh?" I looked up slowly. Harsh? No. Honest? Yes. She's struggling, Marcus. And the whole family is talking about it. Let them talk, I said. If they cared about truth, they'd ask me what happened. But they don't. They just want someone to blame so they can feel better about doing nothing. She didn't respond, but her face said enough. She wasn't just grieving her mother's comfort. She was grieving the illusion that our marriage existed in a vacuum, untouched by family mess. But it never had. She had simply grown used to me absorbing all the tension like a sponge. That weekend, I met up with my friend Ryan, someone who had watched this saga unfold from the sidelines. He wasn't one for drama, but he'd always been blunt in a way that cut through my pride. "She really said that in your house?" he asked after I recounted the full story. "Yep," I nodded. "Beggar. Worst decision her daughter ever made. All of it." Ryan whistled low. "Man, and you still let her finish her mashed potatoes." I laughed for the first time in days. "Right." He shook his head. "You're not stingy, bro. You're exhausted. And it's not just her, it's Leah too. She let this go on because it benefited her. Let's be real." That last sentence lingered like smoke in my chest. Because he wasn't wrong. Leah had let this dynamic fester, unchecked, because it kept the peace. Because it shielded her from the discomfort of confrontation. I had been the one paying, and not just with money. Later that night, the second wave of fallout arrived. Patricia had gone public. I saw it when Leah scrolled her social media and let out a quiet, horrified gasp. "Oh my God," she whispered, holding the screen toward me. There it was, Patricia's Facebook post, long and dramatic. Some people forget who stood by them when they had nothing. Now they have a little success, and suddenly they cut off family like we're disposable. I've never begged for anything, but betrayal like this, especially from someone who claimed to love my daughter, is a wound I'll never forget. The comments were a circus. Cousins, church ladies, neighbors, all chiming in with Bible verses, fake outrage, and sympathy for a woman who had conveniently left out every truth that mattered. One cousin even wrote, "Some men think being a provider means control. SMH. Praying for you, Auntie." I closed the app and handed the phone back to Leah. "Now do you believe me?" I asked. She looked gutted. I didn't think she'd lie like that. She's not lying. She's storytelling. Big difference. I didn't confront Patricia. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. That was the part that confused people the most. They expected a rebuttal. A rebuttal means you're still trying. I wasn't. 2 days later, Leah came to me, quieter than usual, holding her phone in one hand and guilt in the other. She called again, she said. Said she'll apologize properly. In person. She wants to come over. No, I said simply. She said she'll be civil. I don't care if she shows up wearing a halo. She's not stepping back in this house. Leah nodded slowly. She didn't argue this time. And that silence, for the first time in weeks, didn't feel hollow. It felt like understanding. She came back on a Wednesday. No warning this time. No text or phone call to ask if it was okay. Just the buzz of the doorbell around 6:45 p.m., right when I was settling into the couch with a reheated plate of leftovers and a quiet mind. Leah was upstairs in the shower, and for a split second, I considered pretending I wasn't home. But something in me wanted to see her face again, not out of curiosity, not even out of bitterness. Just clarity. I needed to confirm what I already suspected. Her apology, if it came, would be too little and far too late. I opened the door, and there she was, Patricia, wrapped in a navy cardigan, hair pinned neatly, eyes slightly red but dry. She looked smaller than usual, which surprised me. No perfume, no gold jewelry, just a weathered face that had aged 10 years since I last saw it. But the moment I met her gaze, I knew it wasn't humility that brought her back. It was desperation. "Marcus," she said softly, "I don't want to fight." "That's good," I replied, stepping outside and pulling the door halfway closed behind me. "Because you're not coming in." She blinked, stunned, then nodded slowly like she'd rehearsed this moment and hadn't expected to be checked at the door. I wanted to apologize. Properly. For what I said. For how I made you feel. "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms. She hesitated. "I was wrong to speak about you that way. I didn't realize how much you were doing for us. I let my pride get in the way." There it was, that word again. Pride. It always fascinated me how people like Patricia could hide behind it like a safety net, even while asking for forgiveness. Not remorse. Not accountability. Just wounded pride. "And now that you do realize it?" I asked. "I see how much you've sacrificed. You didn't deserve to be spoken to like that. I'm sorry." I looked at her, waiting for more. Waiting for something that sounded like it came from her soul instead of a script. But that was it. That was the whole show. No mention of trying to manipulate Leah. No acknowledgement of the social media post. No recognition that her so-called concern for the family had always come at my expense. "You're sorry for what you said," I replied. "Not for what you believed." She frowned, confused. "What do you mean? You still think I'm stingy? You still think I failed you? You're just mad you got caught saying it out loud." "Marcus." "No," I cut in. "You came here hoping to get your foot back in the door. But you're not sorry that you crossed the line. You're sorry that the line finally snapped back." Her eyes narrowed. "I didn't come here to be insulted. And I didn't buy this house to be disrespected," I shot back. "But here we are." Just then, Leah came downstairs, her footsteps quiet, but her expression thunderous. She stepped out beside me, robe still damp at the sleeves, and looked between us like she'd walked in on a conversation that had been brewing for years. Which, in a way, she had. "Mom," she said softly, "you shouldn't have come." Patricia reached out, her voice cracking. "I just wanted to make it right. I miss you." Leah hesitated. I could see the war on her face, guilt versus growth. It wasn't easy for her to watch her mother unravel, but for the first time, She didn't immediately rush to rescue her. "I miss you too," she said. "But you went too far. And you tried to pull me with you. That's not okay." Patricia's shoulders slumped. "So that's it. After everything I've done for you." I nearly laughed. That was the real Patricia, always keeping score, always expecting repayment. Even her love came with a ledger. Leah didn't flinch. "Everything you did was from a place of control, not love. I see that now." The words hung there between them, slicing through years of emotional manipulation like glass shattering on tile. Patricia didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stood there, lips tight, then turned and walked back to her car without another word. As the taillights disappeared down our street, I exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. Leah leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, eyes distant. "She's not going to let this go," she said. "I know. She might tell everyone I turned against her." "She already did." Leah nodded slowly, and I watched something in her settle. Not peace exactly, but clarity. She had finally seen her mother without the filter of childhood reverence. And as painful as that was, it was also freeing. That night, she climbed into bed without a word. "No, I'm sorry. No big declarations. Just silence. But not the cold kind. Not anymore." This was the silence of a marriage that had just survived a storm and was now drying off, piece by piece. I never thought I'd be proud to be called stingy. It used to sting. Hearing it behind my back, whispered at family functions, slipped into conversations like a subtle insult. But now, after everything, the word felt like armor. Not because I enjoyed withholding, but because it reminded me of what I was no longer giving away freely: my peace, my time, my dignity. I used to think generosity meant saying yes even when it hurt. Now I know better. Real generosity has boundaries, and mine were long overdue. A month passed, then two. Patricia never came back to the house. Not once. No texts. No calls. Leah told me she still heard from her, mostly through long, rambling voice notes about how ungrateful we both were. But she didn't push me to reconnect. I think she knew better now. She'd seen how far her mother was willing to go to preserve an illusion. How fast she twisted love into leverage. There was no mending that. Not without losing pieces of ourselves in the process. Around that time, I noticed Leah changing in quiet ways. She started handling her own mother's drama instead of funneling it through me. She stopped defending behavior that, deep down, had always made her uncomfortable. And most importantly, she began asking questions about our finances, our responsibilities, our future. Not to criticize, but to understand. For the first time in our marriage, she wasn't just watching me carry the load. She was offering to help hold it. We didn't talk much about what happened. Some things didn't need retelling. But the space Patricia left behind had made room for something unexpected. A version of us that was more honest, more aware, and, ironically, more connected than before. Still, the public backlash lingered. Every time we attended a family gathering, or attempted to, there were eyes on us. Whispers. Stilted greetings. Someone always made a comment that was just vague enough to be deniable. At one event, Leah's cousin joked, "Careful what you say, or Marcus might cut you off too." Laughter followed, but it wasn't warm. It was cold and performative, a reminder that I'd broken an unspoken contract. The one where the man marries into a family and quietly supports them, no questions asked. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because I was no longer playing their game. What surprised me most was how liberating it felt to not care. Truly not care. Not in a bitter, vengeful way, but in the calm, centered way that comes from finally valuing your own sanity above someone else's comfort. I didn't need Patricia's approval. I didn't need her praise or her version of family loyalty. All I needed was clarity, and I'd found it. One Sunday afternoon, while Leah was out with friends, I stood alone in the living room, the very space Patricia once treated like her own. I looked around at the furniture she'd criticized, the curtains she tried to replace, the carpet she once called cheap. And I smiled. Not because I won, but because I finally reclaimed the space I paid for. The space I maintained. The space I protected. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel, her brother. "Heard Mom had a fall last week. Thought you should know." No request for help. No snide remark. Just a flat notification. I stared at it for a while, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I typed, "Hope she recovers well." And nothing more. Because I could care. I just didn't have to fix everything anymore. When Leah got home that night, I told her about the message. She nodded but didn't say much. Then, after a long pause, she looked up at me and said something I hadn't expected. "I'm proud of you." I raised an eyebrow. For what? For not folding. For standing up for yourself, even when it meant standing up to me. Her words hit deeper than I could explain. Not because I needed validation, but because it had taken her this long to see how hard that choice had been. I hadn't wanted a war. I hadn't gone looking for conflict. But when it found me, I finally chose myself. Later that night, I sat at the dining table with a cup of tea, reflecting on everything. The house was quiet, truly quiet, not hollow. And for the first time, I wasn't waiting for the next crisis, the next insult, the next manipulation disguised as love. I was just still. It hadn't been easy. Drawing that line. Saying no. Watching people twist my silence into cruelty. But I'd do it again. Because at the end of the day, peace isn't free. You pay for it with discomfort, with distance, with the weight of being misunderstood. But once it's yours, no one can take it without your permission. I used to think being the provider meant being the bridge, holding up everyone even when they stomped across without looking down. But now I know better. I'm not the bridge anymore. I'm the boundary, and I'm okay with that. Have you ever had to set a boundary so firm it changed the way your entire family saw you? Sometimes protecting your peace means losing the version of yourself others depended on, but never appreciated. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about the moment you chose self-respect over people-pleasing. And if you want more raw, real family stories like this one, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what's coming next. See you soon in the next story.